Hello, everybody. It is I, the Nomad, coming to you from the wastelands of the internet with the news around as I see it. And there was a lot of stories. There was a lot going on this week, folks. A lot, right? Let's get right into this. I am here alone, which is fine. I have no co-host with me to rein me in. Start with this. From the Wall Street Journal, Ukraine runs into Russian air superiority. Minefields have strengthened Russian defenses as Kiev presses its counteroffensive. I want you to remember that line. As Kiev presses its counteroffensive. Ukraine has said its forces were advancing on several axes in their counteroffensive, but were struggling to counter Russian air and artillery superiority, hobbling its assaults in the east and the south. Now into its second week, Ukraine's ambitious attempt to take back Russian-occupied land is proving to be a hard slog against the dense minefields and well-prepared defenses. After Ukraine's first probing attacks yielded mixed results, its forces have mostly paused their advances. Wait a minute. But you said they were pressing the counteroffensive. Does that sound like you're pressing the counteroffensive? Quick, launder more money. Doesn't sound like they're pressing the counteroffensive here, right? As commanders take stock of the past 2 weeks and analyze ways to punch through Russian lines without taking huge losses, Russia has taken advantage of its superior air power and Kiev's limited air defenses to strike Ukrainian armored columns and stop several attacks, destroying some of the sophisticated Western weaponry Ukraine is fielding. Okay. Warfare has a way of teaching lessons to the survivors. Okay? And the Russian military is in a situation where it has never found itself before. I can hear it now. Nomad, what are you talking about? Nomad. What has the Russians, what kind of situations have the Russians not found themselves before? They're on the defensive. They've been on the defensive for years. In World War II, they were on the defensive for a long time. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. Okay? What I'm talking about is they are in a position where they've outgunned and have technological and air superiority over their enemies. The Russians have never had that before. And when I say technological, I'm not talking about this tank versus that tank, etc., etc. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about overall means. That doesn't mean it's a one-sided affair by any stretch of the imagination. The Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight. But the difference here is manpower, right? And air power. The Russians now are learning how to use air power in a combined arms mentality. They haven't had to learn that before because they never had that in mind, considering the forces that they were facing. What they were always facing was the West having superiority in the air, the West having superiority from a technological perspective, but having far fewer ground forces, and how you go about maximizing that. But Nomad, didn't the Russians have that before? Yeah, the Russians actually did have that over the Ukrainians. They did have the massive ground forces in comparison, but only temporarily. And the reason for that is that Russia is not throwing and still hasn't thrown its full weight into this conflict. Unlike the Ukrainians, which have completely mobilized now, Russia's mobilization for the Ukraine is limited still. You don't see 1 million men marching into the Ukraine. And Russia could field 1 million soldiers storming into the Ukraine. They have that capability. It'd be a waste. All right, but they have that capability. People are underselling the Russians. And this great counteroffensive that they've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, all right, since early, or I should say late last year, or November, December timeframe. They're talking about how they were going to build up this great, counteroffensive. This great counteroffensive got its nose bloodied badly. And the Ukrainians can't afford to take the kind of losses that the Russians can. And I'm not talking about from a material perspective, because the West will just supply them with more tanks. The West will just do exactly what Mr. Barkley said. They also have vodka, which helps. But they will just give more money away. They will just fund more weaponry into these areas. Okay, so it's not that. The problem, though, is manpower-wise, you don't have any more to push. If this counteroffensive fails miserably with heavy losses in men, the Ukraine is doomed. And Russia understands this. This is the Russian way of fighting. Put up a wall, make it bloody, put up a wall, draw back, make it bloody, put up a wall, draw back, make it bloody. That is the Russian mentality since Napoleon's age. Napoleon marched into Russia on his way to Moscow. And he did capture Moscow. He marched in with 600,000 men. When he got back, he had an estimated 60,000 men left. 60,000. He lost 90% of his troops. The Germans had the exact same result. And what did the Russians do? Pull back, pull a line, make it bloody for you to take it, pull back, make a line, make it bloody to take. But now the Russians can sit up there and make it bloody with even less cost to themselves using air power. And they're learning how to utilize that air power. They're learning how to use attack helicopters the way that they have to be utilized on a modern battlefield. You don't just fly them willy-nilly over the battlefield hoping for the best, especially when the enemy has man pads. Man-portable frickin' air defense systems. Man pads can do a number on a massed group if you know where they're at on air power. But if the planes show up here or the planes show up there, you can't mass your man pads, especially when they only show up temporarily and then duck back down where they can't be hit. And the Russians are learning this tactic. They're learning how to utilize that, and they're learning how to utilize those systems to hammer the holy hell out of these armored columns, all right, that were given to the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians are suffering as a result. Our weapon systems of Bradley, our methodologies, and our technology is used as part of a combined arms fielded military. A Bradley cannot, on its own, all right, rechange the landscape of the warfare. It's made out of aluminum, for crying out loud. It's tough, all right, but it's meant to be used in a combined arms offensive, and you can't provide a combined arms offensive for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians can't do it. That's why they're begging. That's why they're absolutely begging for F-16s. And people think that they're begging for F-16s so that they can counter the Russian superiority, air superiority. And I agree, that is part of what they're trying to do. But they also understand that the F-16's role, all right, and the way we utilize them is in ground defense as well, and ground support as well. It has ground attack capability. So you have Western intelligence. You have satellite intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. All right, that's being provided by the West to the Ukrainians. Okay? But that intelligence only goes so far. And it ignores the fact that the Russians aren't slouches in this area either. The Russians have had spy satellites for years, folks. Nobody talks about this. They act like U.S. intelligence and Western intelligence is so much superior to the Russians. And to a point it is. I'm not going to deny that. All right? But for this battlefield, for what's going on from a tactical perspective here, our intelligence gathering is not necessarily superior from a tactical perspective as the Russians is. It's just not. And so the Russians are able to see what the movements are. The Russians are able to say, okay, here's how I can interdict this. And they have more systems, and they have air superiority. And Zelensky is begging for F-16s to try and mitigate that. The problem Zelensky has, though, is his lack of understanding of what you're going to do. Sure, we could give them F-16s, okay? So you put, let's say, 2 squadrons of F-16s, I'm just pointing this out to you, in the western half of the Ukraine. What's going to happen to those F-16s if they get freaking inundated with Russian cruise missiles? They're just going to get blown up on the ground. Oh, but their defenses no match. Their defenses are able to do it. Yeah, the Ukrainians are proving that air defense-wise, when it comes to the kind of missiles that the Russians are utilizing against them, that they work and they don't. Yeah, they're effective to a degree, but when you have a very small resource, and we can't give hundreds of F-16s over to the Ukrainians, okay? We can give hundreds of Bradley fighting vehicles, which we did. We gave 109 Bradley fighting vehicles. Okay, over 16% of them are now gone. They've lost. I would estimate, my estimates, I would say that a quarter of the Bradley fighting vehicles that we have supplied to the Ukrainians have either been captured or destroyed by the Russians already. The Russian minefields, they literally sent in, without any other support, a group of Bradleys to try and rescue forces that were having a bad time, and every one of those Bradleys were taken out. we have diversity at Dickless Men. So checkmate. This is a hard battle for the Ukrainians. But it's a hard battle for the Ukrainians for multiple reasons, some of which have absolutely nothing to do with a difference in manpower and so forth. It has to do with the fact that the Ukrainian plane, okay, is not conducive to a border, to a defensible border is what I'm referring to. In order for a nation to exist, and I've tried to explain this many times, and I know I'm harping to the choir here, you can't be a nation state without having a defensible border. You cannot have a nation state without defensible borders. Now, that defense can be technological, I admit that. But when you have just an open plain, people look at, well, we don't have a nomad. Our border with Canada is pretty long, and there's no defensible borders on it. There's a lot of defensible borders on our border with Canada. For one thing, you got the entire Great Lakes. And in the areas where the Great Lakes aren't, you normally have massive forests. Are there plains in certain areas? Yes, there are. All right, and they do exist in a certain area. But you're now funneling all of your weaponry into a single area. That makes it defensible as well. In the West, all it is rugged mountain terrain all the way along it, except for the small little sliver on the coast. What about with Mexico? What about with Mexico? We don't have defensible borders with Mexico? Oh, I beg to differ. Starts with the Rio Grande River. That covers a lot of it. And then after the river, what do you have? Mountains. And then after the mountains, what do you have? Oh, it's called desert. And let me tell you right now, anybody who thinks you can just go, oh, deserts are nothing in modern technology, it's still a problem in modern technology. But all these predictions and all these stories you keep hearing about how the Ukrainians are kicking the crap out of the Russians, and the Russians are losing all these people and everything else, then why did they stop their counteroffensive? Start understanding what the Ukrainians are fighting against. Start understanding how rough this really is. Start understanding this is a civil war between Russian forces. Because the Ukrainians are as Russian as the Russians are, folks. They only speak a slightly different dialect. I shouldn't say slightly, it is significant. They have a different cultural mindset. But a cultural mindset does not a nation make. If that was true, Alabama would be its own state, folks. Hawaii would be its own nation state. Go around and take a look at all the Indian reservations. Sovereign territory. Not to the United States it isn't. Why? Because they don't have defensible borders. And even if they had strategic defensible borders, they don't have enough manpower to sit up and defend them. Which is why they're on reservations. That's a harsh reality. I'm not trying to put any kind of moral pinnings to this. I'm telling you the way it actually works. Not the way you wish it does. The way the world works. The reality of the world. It doesn't work on wish fulfillment. How many people saw this story? Energy Department gets 2 ransom notices as MoveIt hack claims more victims. The U.S. Department of Energy got ransom requests from the Russian-linked extortion group CIOP, all right, at both of its nuclear waste facility and scientific education facilities that were recently hit in a global hacking campaign, as spokesman said on Friday. The DOE contractor Oak Ridge Associated Universities and Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, the New Mexico-based facility for disposal of defense-related radioactive nuclear waste, were hit in the attack, which was first reported on Thursday. Data was compromised at the two DOE entities after hackers breached their systems through a security flaw in a file transfer tool, MoveIt Transfer. The software is widely used by organizations around the world to share sensitive data. From the United States government departments to the UK's telecom regulator and energy giant Shell, a range of victims have emerged since Burlington, Massachusetts-based Progress Software found the security flaw in its MoveIt Transfer product last month. The wide-ranging impact shows how even the most security-minded federal agencies are struggling to defend against ransomware attacks. Ransomware gangs typically scour, right, for such widely used tools. The United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, said Thursday that several federal agencies had been hit by the MoveIt breach. It did not say which ones, but added that there has not been much impact on the federal civilian executive branch. We have a border. We have a border. We have defensible borders. Whether we defend them or not is a different story. Okay, just putting it out there. All right. I'm going to be real blunt. This kind of attack on nuclear facilities and things like that is dangerous. And it shows a lack of understanding within the federal government of the necessity for certain steps to be taken and how to correctly isolate what they're doing. Now, you can't do it with everything the government does. The government has to have a method of talking back and forth to people that aren't in the government. But within the government itself, okay, that area should be completely isolated. Government agencies talking to government agencies within themselves should be completely isolated. The fact that we haven't set up such a tiered system like that is not good. And there are ways to protect that. But instead, we're too busy doing crap like this. DOJ seeks protective order to prevent Trump from releasing classified materials amid the ongoing investigation. The Justice Department on Friday filed a motion seeking to block former President Trump from releasing any classified materials that will be shared with his legal team during his prosecution for the mishandling of records at Mar-a-Lago, noting that some are still used in the course of their investigation. Really? What investigation? The documents include information pertaining to ongoing investigations, which could be used to further cases against uncharged individuals, the Department of Justice wrote. I would have stood up there and said bullshit right off the bat and said nonsense. All right, that claim is false. And right there, I said I would make it a point saying, if you can't tell me and show me an active investigation of who you're actually looking at, and why you hadn't explained to me why you haven't charged them yet, I would, as a judge, I would demand the prosecutors behind closed doors give me that information. And if they can't give it to me, I will sit up there and rule against them. I would make it a point of ending these lying sacks of shit. Now, what happened here is the judge sit up there and referred it to the previous judge, who was the freaking, Trump-hating Nazi, right? And the reason that they're actually doing this, the reason that that the Justice Department is trying to do this is they're trying to play a game about what is classified and what isn't classified. They're going to make claims about things that are not classified, claiming that they are. That's what they're doing here. And they're also trying to slow down the movement on this because sooner or later, they're going to walk away from this. They'll have when Trump is charged with something else. Trust me. That's what this looks like from them. They're going to walk away from this at some point. They're going to claim that they were hampered by this judge and they can't continue the prosecution, all right, and they're going to walk away from it. Now, this judge is trying to do the right thing. She's made some really good comments about, appropriate comments. However, to be honest, we're not living in the world she wants to live in. And she's not. She's trying to act as if this is all up and up, and that she's given the benefit of the doubt to the prosecution instead of the other way around. And let's be perfectly frank, the prosecution doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt after what they've done. We already know who the DOJ is. They've already lied repeatedly about this whole thing. And it's created a bifurcation of a two-tier justice system. And the problem that the left is having with this is that they're struggling to convince people who are on Trump's side, all right, that this is not that this is serious when they have not treated it as such with Hillary Clinton. All you have to do is look at what they did with Hillary Clinton. That's all you got to do. You bring up Hillary Clinton and they shut up and they just start seething. You can see it in the media. If you go in front of MSNBC, if you go on MSNBC and you're on the right wing with this, and they're going to try and prosecute Trump, look at what he did. Well, look at what Hillary did. Immediately bring that up. Why is it he's being treated different than Hillary? And Hillary wasn't the president. And don't stop there. Take it to them. Say, why are you treating this differently? Because you're nothing more than a leftist hack. You're a leftist activist. You're not a journalist. Call them out on it. And you can. People started doing it successfully. Calling them out for what they are. Not journalists. Leftist activists. For crying out loud, these morons tried to sit up there and say when the guy brought up that Hillary Clinton's team used hammers to destroy evidence after it had been subpoenaed, they were like, oh no, that happened. That didn't happen. We're going to fact check that now. We're going to fact check. Oh, yeah, it did happen. And their faces were brutal. Hi, Jacob. And yes, that's the problem. They can't run that narrative and get traction on it. Why can't they get traction? They can't get traction because, quite frankly, there's no traction there to get. It's a major problem for them. And the Justice Department, they're looking more and more like clowns. Look at this. The Minneapolis police face federal oversight for excessive force and discrimination. Really? The police in Minneapolis routinely used excessive force and discriminated against blacks and Native Americans, the U.S. Justice Department said on Friday after a 2-year investigation prompted by the killing of George Floyd. In other words, we're going to sit up there and make claims of stuff we ourselves do. Excessive force? Anybody remember the Rogers? In the 6 a.m. freaking raid down in Miami? These clowns are bitching and crying about look at how they're treated. Look, first of all, how was George Floyd? If you watch that entire sequence, at what point are you saying that excessive force was used? I'm serious. I want somebody to tell me at what point they say excessive force was used. At what point? Oh, this is excessive force. You got a guy here who's refusing to be arrested. He's struggling on the ground, right? Oh, he knelt on him for 9 minutes as they were surrounded by a crowd and they're trying to keep him in the custody. What did you want them to do? It's just like this idiot. Walmart shopper said a police officer knelt on his neck during a receipt check over a frozen pizza. Gee, really? So he just said, well, he just grabbed this guy and said, give me your receipt? No, of course not, because according to what happened here, a Wall Street shopper said he was pinned to the ground by police officers in Kansas City, Kansas, after one of them asked to see his receipt for a $5 frozen pizza. Dayton Borisov, right? All right, 24, told Insider that he had purchased the pizza for his family and was leaving the Walmart store in early June when an officer confronted him. As I took one, maybe 2 steps past him, he said, got your receipt? And I said, yes, and kept on walking. As I walked toward the sliding glass door, I saw in the reflection that he was coming at me. The officer pinned him to a brick wall, or I asked him if he had paid for his purchase. I said, yes, I did. I have the receipt in my left pocket, but you don't have the right to detain me. That's exactly what it went into there for. You have no right to do anything to me. I don't have to listen to any of your instructions. In other words, he became uncooperative with the police when he could have gotten an apology from the police. No, instead he got a beatdown from the police, but he was thrown to the ground. Whether the police have the right to ask you for a receipt, you don't get belligerent with them. And you don't tell them what their rights are because, quite frankly, you have no knowledge of what their rights are in the given situation. Moron! Let me tell you, this guy goes to court. Well, he'll go to a civil court, but if it went to a criminal court, he'd be in jail. Borisov said that the officer called for backup, wrestled him to the ground, in other words, and attempted to handcuff him. He said he tried to resist the handcuffs. Dude, you should have sit up there and said that and put your handcuffs out. See, there's something called reality, and I've tried to explain this before. The police are going to use overwhelming force against you. You can see this blue-haired freaking hippie, all right, on the ground fighting with the police. You want to sit up there and try and defend your rights in court? Fine. You want to say, hey, you have no reason to sit up there and look for my receipt. There's every reason they have to sit up there and look for your receipt. It's called suspicion. And all they are trying to do is investigate. And they haven't a reason to investigate. And you decided to block their investigation. This is not excessive use of force. And I'm not a huge fan of the police, folks. But I'm not an idiot either. Because you end up in situations like this. A DEA agent was stalked for 10 years. A paranoid Florida man stalked a Drug Enforcement Administration agent for 10 years, according to police who attempted, or not attempted, but who arrested the suspect after he was observed driving in very close proximity to the residence of the victim's 71-year-old mother, according to police records or court records. Investigators charged Bradley Smith, 41, began stalking Evans Miyamoto after meeting the federal agent when he went to the DEA's office in Tampa to report suspicious drug activity. Since that encounter a decade ago, Smith became paranoid that the victim was investigating him, according to the criminal complaint. Despite Miyamoto's assurance that he was not being investigated, Smith allegedly pursued a years-long stalking campaign that included him showing up at the Tampa DEA's office and other parts of the country in search of the 38-year-old. Due to Smith's contacting multiple government agencies inquiring on the victim's residence and coming into the government office, he was trespassed from the DEA's Tampa's office. Agents have spoken with the defendant multiple times and asked him to stop calling their offices and attempting to locate the victim. A sheriff's deputy reported Smith allegedly made threats to harm Miyamoto, and according to a witness, claimed that he knew where the victim lived and had driven by his house several times. The witness, and if you're wondering why I'm reading this, I'm still trying to find out what the hell's going on here. The witness, who was not identified in the June 15th felony complaint filed against Smith, told cops that Smith said that he had access to firearms while speaking about how he is frustrated with Miyamoto. All right. While searching for Miyamoto, Smith, seen above, was recently spotted by Miyamoto's mother on several occasions, stopping in front of her residence where the victim grew up. Smith, who was recorded by surveillance cameras outside the woman's home, was arrested earlier this month while in very close proximity to the residence. Smith was initially charged with a misdemeanor stalking count. All right, he was charged yesterday with aggravated stalking, a felony. Did you ever take out a restraining order on this guy? You guys are the police. Did you ever take out a restraining order on this gentleman? You don't like being investigated. Too bad. Well, he threatened us. Okay, if you have proof of the threat, let's see the proof of the threat. Let's see the proof of the threat. Oh, he may have been stalking him. He may have been keeping tabs on him. It's not illegal to keep tabs on somebody. It's not illegal to investigate people, folks. Private detectives do it all the time. It's not illegal. Up to the point where you become such a nuisance that they issue a cease and desist order from the court. If you didn't have that, and this would go in front of me, I would just throw it out saying, where's the order that says don't do this? Where's the court order that says what you're doing is being defined as stalking? Because if that's the order, if you can sit up there and say that there's a statute about stalking, then every police investigation can be considered stalking. You can't tell me what they were doing with Trump wasn't considered stalking. Or am I missing something? Meth detectives. Now, this guy, I'm not saying that this guy who was doing the stalking is a good guy. He's not. Probably isn't. He's probably one of the people who identified a threat to his organization, right, and is trying to keep tabs on him because he thinks this is the guy who's going to be the point man to go into here. The guy could also just be a freaking loon. But you as the police, you as an officer, you have a responsibility, all right, of protecting yourself, yes, but you also have a responsibility as a citizen, all right, to go through the process just like everybody else. There should have been legal ramifications given only after the court stood up there and said, what you're doing is this. We're giving you a cease and desist order right now. No, no, no. The police, though, while they're busy doing that, Los Angeles City councilman charged with 10 counts, including embezzlement and perjury. Prosecutors charged a Los Angeles City councilman with 10 counts, including embezzlement and perjury, Tuesday after the latest criminal case to upend the scandal-plagued governing board of the nation's second-largest city. Too bad you weren't in New York. Curran Price Jr. faces 5 counts of embezzlement of government funds, 3 counts of perjury, and 2 counts of conflict of interest, according to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Price was charged. He must not have given enough money to the District Attorney's Office. Price was charged for having a financial interest in projects that he voted on as a council member and having the city pay nearly $34,000 in medical benefits for his now wife while he was still married to another woman. Between 2019 and 2021, Price's wife allegedly received payments totaling more than $150,000 from developers before Price voted to approve projects, according to Gascon's statement. He also is accused of failing to list the money his wife received on government disclosure forms. But meanwhile, there's nothing to see about Burisma. The laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop, there's nothing to see there. Nothing to see here. From the New York Times, folks. This is the military section now we're going to talk about. U.S. soldiers injured in Syria were part of a commando unit. I didn't ask what kind of unit they were there for. I'm curious as to what the hell were they doing in Syria. Why are U.S. forces in Syria? 22 soldiers who were injured in a helicopter accident in northeastern Syria on Sunday were part of the Army's highly secretive Delta Force Commando Unit, which had previously carried out a kill or capture raids against Islamic State militants in that part of the country, senior military officials said on Tuesday. The Pentagon's Central Command, which oversees operations in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, said in a brief statement on Monday night that a helicopter mishap in the northeastern Syria had left nearly 24 service members with injuries. The statement said that 10 of the soldiers had been evacuated to hospitals outside the region. The command did not say what the commandos were doing when the incident happened or what may have caused the incident, saying only that no enemy fire had been reported and that an inquiry was underway. We have nothing additional to provide pending outcome of investigations, said Major General Moore, a spokesman for the Central Command, said in an email on Tuesday. But 3 military officials, speaking on the condition of anonymity, all right, because of the continuing inquiry, said on Tuesday that a MH-47 Chinook helicopter carrying the commandos had gone down in apparently good weather without taking hostile fire. What the hell are you doing with a Chinook? Okay? Now, if you're part of the Delta Force, what are you doing on a Chinook? Dead serious. What the hell's going on? A Chinook is... Oh, it's a heavy carrier system. Okay, I mean, Chinooks are a big airframe, and they can carry a lot of weight for a helicopter. Okay? They can carry more weight than a Black Hawk can, by a lot. This is why I'm wondering what the hell this thing was doing here, though. But it's slow and it's old. Those are older airframes. Even modified. The Chinooks, we used to call them shit hooks when I was in. Okay? Because they leaked. they leaked. Hi, Sean. The Chinooks that we had, that they just leaked hydraulic fluid left and right. So we call them shit hooks. Now, there are advantages to Chinooks, okay? For one thing, they're a very stable platform. Secondly, of all the helicopters that we have in our inventory, they are designed to go into most areas that other helicopters can't, including in mountainous terrain. Very high altitudes that other helicopters have problems with, the Chinook can actually fly in. There's limits. It can't just fly over like Mount Everest. I'm not saying it can do that. But it can fly a lot higher than many of the other airframes. All that being said, though, it's an older airframe, and for what you're doing in Syria doesn't have the kind of mountainous terrain that you would need a Chinook in, that you couldn't do with the pristine Blackhawks that they would normally be flying. Unless they were doing something in a large environment, which is not Delta Force's specialty. If you're putting in so many troops that you need Chinooks with, what the hell are you doing? Then bringing in Delta Force. That's something that you bring Rangers in for. This is another example, I think, of people wanting to do things in a command creep because, well, we want our piece of the pie, even though that's not the role for it. Drop and fly. Yeah, what were they doing? Dropping fly flags. Here's another soldier. Okay. I need to duct tape that MF down. Army soldier hides AirTag in a cap before going to Fort Hood for 2 weeks. A female Army soldier says she hid an Apple AirTag in her cap before going to Fort Kavanaugh, all right, formerly known as Fort Hood, for 2 weeks. Over 24 women have been found dead at the Texas military base in 2020. In a TikTok posted on April 25th, the TikToker OGC, the goddess, right, shared that she would be going to Fort Hood for 2 weeks. She said she shared an AirTag, or she shared an AirTag in her uniform. I don't think shared. I think taped, right, in her uniform cap in case she went missing and somebody needed her location. Hey, moron! And yes, I'm calling you a moron. You are basically defeating the purpose of anonymity by putting an AirTag thing in your uniform, you frigging stupid idiot. I'm being real blunt with you, dumbass. Do you realize that you are letting everybody know where you're at with such an AirTag, you stupid moron, including the enemy? If you got deployed somewhere and you did that, the enemy could find you, probably your entire unit, all because you were like, I might go missing. And the women who've gone missing, for the most part, and it's a problem, I can deny it, started off going to clubs and clubbing it up and meeting the wrong people and the wrong element. It's not just because, oh, wait a minute here, there's a bunch of predators wandering around Fort Hood. This soldier should be disciplined. If this soldier is doing crap like this is the kind of stupidity that gets entire units wiped out because of an unthinking moron. She should be separated from the military immediately. Just my opinion. Off to San Francisco, folks. Fed up San Francisco residents forced to self-fund heavyweight planters to block homeless encampments. San Francisco residents raised $25,000 to buy 1,400-pound street planters too heavy for homeless to move. You put enough people in it, they can move it, folks. I'm just going to put it out to you. San Francisco residents in the Mission District, fed up by homeless encampments, raised over $25,000 to install sidewalk planters to block homeless people from setting up tents there, local media outlets reported. Locals told the San Francisco Chronicle that Harrison Street had been taken over by encampments for the past 3 years and was in terrible shape. Neighbors described being threatened with violence as they passed the encampments. They revealed that they were forced to take action because they didn't get help from the city. Well, why can't they get help from the city? Might be something to do with this. Walking away, San Francisco mall owner hands the property back to the bank as exodus continues. The shopping center giant Westfield is walking away from its San Francisco Center Mall, becoming the latest major corporation to leave the California city amid rampant crime problems. Westfield confirmed to Fox Business Monday that the company and partner Brookfield Properties earlier this month stopped making payments on the $558 million loan securing the San Francisco Center property. For more than 20 years, Westfield has proudly and successfully operated San Francisco Center, investing significantly over that time into the vitality of the product, the company said in a statement. Given the challenging operating conditions in downtown San Francisco, which have led to declines in sales, occupancy, and foot traffic, we have made the difficult decision to begin the process to transfer management of the shopping center to our lenders to allow them to appoint a receiver to operate the property going forward. In other words, they just sit there and said, foreclosed. We're walking away. They're not claiming ownership of it. They turned everything over to the bank and walked away. Here, it's yours. Here's your secured loan. Here's your security for it. Now, why are they doing that? It isn't just because they can't make money, although that's part of it. There's another problem. There's another problem, and that problem, all right, is the fact that the price of that facility is no longer worth it. And this is a warning of where we are headed, folks. In the 1920s, late 1920s, through the early 1930s, we had something in this country called a depression. All right? Not a recession, a depression. In Germany, at the time, in the Weimar Republic, in order to get around all of that, what they did was print money. So they had hyperinflation. Something we're doing now. But if you try to stop, and our Fed has slowly started to try and pull back on that, right? They still haven't, but they've slowly started to. They haven't pulled completely back from it. What it leads to is a depression. The value of the property is no longer worth it. It's a devaluation of property and assets. In America during that time frame, it drove people to the point where the milk that the farmers were producing, they were just pouring it in the streets because the value had dropped to the point where it was worthless. We're getting ready to run into a very similar scenario in this country because of the overspending in this case and the malfeasance by Democrats and the government and Republicans as well. Because Republicans went right along and voted for this horse shit. They had a chance to really put an end to this. And would it have caused hard economic times? Without a doubt. But it's the only way to fix the problem. Because we're running out of time. Good luck to you all. Instead, what do we get from good old Biden? Oh, the topless trans woman at the White House Pride event, right? Sparks outrage. What a surprise. You have a Pride event of degenerates, and they act like degenerates. A transgender influencer and activist was hit back after a TikTok video showed her topless during the Pride Month celebration at the White House and sparked controversy. Rose Montoya was among hundreds welcomed by President Joe Biden for their degenerate events. Degeneracy on parade. I'm proud. My pride of degeneracy. And before somebody comes and tells me that's not what it used to be, it's always been about this degeneracy. All you have to do is take a look at the pride events and the pride parades in New York City from the very beginning. You have this kind of behavior going on at every single one of these pride events in New York when they were doing those parades. Or did everyone just think that that's not what this is about. This is about equal treatment. It's never been about equal treatment for these people. It has never been about that. Oh, there might be a few, but in an effort to do what they said is their pride. Right? In the effort to do that, they tolerated and helped promote this kind of degeneracy. Nope. And then they wonder why you're ending up with this. LGBTQ rainbow flags destroyed by vandals outside Stonewall Inn, New York City's birthplace of gay rights movement. What a surprise. 3 people destroyed gay pride rainbow flags in a park outside of the Stonewall Inn, the Greenwich Village bar, where the NYPD raid in 1969 sparked the gay rights movement. The vandalism happened at 3:10 a.m. on Sunday as the 3 men were walking past the Stonewall National Monument in Christopher Park in Christopher Street. They broke a number of flag displays on the fence. They took off, heading east on Waverly Place. The NYPD Crime Unit Task Force is investigating. Really? More degeneracy. San Francisco teacher suspended for allegedly singling out white male students out of frustration and anger. The TikTok user shared a disturbing story about a mom who brought a dead child into the daycare. Right, that's another one. Excuse me. We'll just go on with this part. No, okay, it's not going to show it. I don't see the rest of the story, unfortunately. But she sit up there and single out white males so that she could sit up there and castigate them because she's proud, right? Meanwhile, you have an American freaking professor. American flag makes him anxious. A Marquette University professor said that the American flag makes him anxious in a national public radio interview on Wednesday. Philosophy professor Grant Silva told an interviewer at the WUWM, an NPR affiliate station in Milwaukee, that he feels anxious when he sees an American flag. In the interview, Silva described how excessive imagery of the American flag is borderline nationalism. All right, moron. First problem that I have with that is so what? What's wrong with nationalism? What's wrong with nationalism? What's wrong with defending your country? What's wrong with it? Well, it leads to people, that feel afraid. No, it leads to morons like you, all right, who are anti-American, always have been, okay? Someone who has never understood what nationalism, I'm not talking about National Socialist, I'm talking about nationalism. Nationalism is not a problem, folks. But it is for this asshole because he wants to destroy this nation. That's why he hates this country. He should be fired along with this teacher. California high school teacher, who's the second one, right, allegedly threatens to punishment after students protest pride video in math class. A group of high school students' visceral reaction to the LGBTQ pride video shown in math class went viral this week. A student at what's been identified as Edison High School in Huntington Beach, California, note it wasn't San Francisco, all right, filmed classmates loudly groan and protest as their teacher played Pride Month video during the class. The students moan, "Stop! Turn it off!" One student shouts, "Why are you showing this to kids?" The teacher then scolds the students to be quiet and warns them they will have to watch it on Saturday school if they continue to make noise. Hey, I'll warn you guys right now, if you're going to be inappropriate, I will have supervision down and we'll give you all Saturday school for indescribable, all right? And so knock it off, says the unnamed teacher. What do you mean it's an unnamed teacher? This teacher should be gone. But it isn't just sicko. It isn't just California. All right? A South Carolina teacher had her AP lesson shut down after students snitched what she planned to have them read. A South Carolina teacher's lesson was shut down after students complained that they were uncomfortable. The AP English lesson included Ta-Nehisi Coates' 2015 memoir on racism, Between Me and the World. In other words, why I hate America, why I hate whitey. A South Carolina's AP lesson that would have used Coates' 2015 memoir, Between Me and the World, was shut down after students complained the material made them uncomfortable and could violate the laws discussing systemic racism. In the past spring, Chaplain High School English teacher Mary Wood included the book in her lesson plan before the AP English language exam, according to lesson plans and documents obtained by the state. The lesson asked students to analyze Coates' arguments of Between Me and the World, specifically around systemic racism in America. But students complained that videos they watched before reading the book made them uncomfortable, according to the document. I actually felt ashamed to be a Caucasian, which is exactly what they're trying to do. Blame whitey for everything in the world. Mary should be out of a job. But we're not done with the degeneracy, no. Folks, an elderly woman leaving Macy's Manhattan store shoved to the pavement and kicked repeatedly. A 75-year-old woman leaving Macy's Herald Square in Midtown was shoved to the street by a shirtless attacker who repeatedly kicked her before flinging her Walker and fleeing, the police said on Thursday. The unprovoked assault happened just past 3:10 p.m. All right, on June 10th, as the senior citizen Jeanette Smalls left the department store's flagship location and walked across the street at 34th and 6th Street. You remember Miracle on 34th Street, folks? It was a horrid nightmare, Smalls told the Daily News. The guy comes along and said, "You're not going it nowhere." He was crazy, and nobody stopped. Smalls said a passerby put the bandit in a chokehold before he broke free and fled. Okay, somebody did try to do something. All right. Of course, he couldn't keep him in a chokehold because they didn't, without knowing how to do a chokehold right. And even if you do it right, it could end up with this guy dying. EMS took the victim to Mount Sinai West Hospital with bruises on her legs as well as a deep cut in her knee. Small said that the fugitive bandits rummaged through her bag, stole some items, including $25 worth of vitamins. And what do we have here? Oh, Starbucks. I wonder what Starbucks is doing. Oh, that's right. Starbucks is banning pride decorations? What we know. Starbucks disputed claims from its workers' union on Tuesday that the store was banning pride decorations in the midst of Pride Month. In a statement, a spokesman for Starbucks told Newsweek, "We unwaveringly support the LGBTQIA2 community." We've ran out of letters. We're going to use numbers now, folks. We've ran out of letters. We're going to use numbers and symbols now. There has been no change in any policy on this matter, and we continue to encourage our store leaders to celebrate with their communities, including for the U.S. Pride Month in June. We are deeply concerned about the false information. However, there's a problem here, and here's why they're doing it. Starbucks manager, all right, who ran the Philly store where two black men were refused access to the bathroom, gets $25 million. The white Starbucks manager who was fired when her staff refused to let two black men use the bathroom at a Philadelphia store was awarded $25.6 million. Shannon Phillips on Monday won her lawsuit against the coffee giant and was handed $25 million in punitive damages and $600,000 in compensatory damages. The federal jury in New Jersey found that the company had given her the boot because she was white, which violated her civil rights. And that's what's going to start happening across the freaking country because people have gotten tired of being intolerant, of being tolerant of other people who are intolerant of them. This store didn't let these guys use the freaking bathroom because they had no intention of being in the store. They were abusing the store. They hadn't purchased anything from the store. They weren't going to purchase anything from the store. They were loitering around the store without doing anything. So why were they at the store? Oh, well, we were going to have some interviews. They were there at that store for hours, folks, and hadn't even purchased so much as a single cup of coffee. And then they said, well, I want to use the restroom. Where drugs, where they sit there and have locked restrooms because of heroin use and everything else. And of course, they did it because we were black. It's because you're black they wouldn't let us do it. Not because of how we were acting, but because we were black. Say this isn't so, folks. Say it isn't so. Amazon sparks outrage after abandoning a major promise it made 4 years ago. Meaningless lip service. What could this be? Could this be hiring? While many companies have made climate promises in recent years, Amazon has just provided a reminder that no one is enforcing those pledges. The company just backed out of a promise it made in 2019 to make half of its shipments carbon neutral. For example, the company will remove as much pollution from the air as half of its shipments create by 2030, the Business Insider reports. Shipment Zero announcement is gone from Amazon's blog, but the internet remembers. About 4 years ago, Amazon announced that it would help reduce the amount of heat-trapping pollution it pumps into the atmosphere through an initiative called Shipment Zero. The original announcement is no longer visible, but it has been captured by the Wayback Machine on an online archive that shows web pages as they appeared in the past. The Wayback Machine reveals the pledge to dramatically reduce the company's impact on the environment. For the first time, we can now see a path to net zero. But you know what they couldn't do? They couldn't afford it. Why does Amazon's change of mind matter? When a company says it's carbon neutral, produces net zero carbon, it claims to remove as much heat-trapping carbon pollution from the atmosphere as it produces. One way to do this is by switching to non-polluting equipment, such as electric vehicles instead of gas-powered delivery vehicles. So the company doesn't want to produce pollution from burning gas in the first place, except for it's being burned at the electrical plant, dumbass. You see, these are fantasy things. And the company realized the bottom line is you want us to do things that cost us money and absolutely has no effect on making carbon neutral. I'm making it carbon neutral. Since the company is so large and ships so many products every day, it really could help with cooling down our planet. Really? How? Its products are coming from overseas in big container ships. How are those being freaking done? Have we gone back to wind power? Are we going back to the days of the sail? Are you going to sit up there and start going, well, we want sailing ships to sail our cargo from one country to the next? Can't wait to see the designs from these Fruit Loops. Can't wait to see it. All this kibitzing. Now, who's the reporter for this? Laurel Stella. Story by Laurel Stella. Why hasn't anybody asked Laurel Stella what she's done? Why hasn't she designed a better capacitance gel or a better capacitor, right, so that you could make the storing of electricity actually viable? Why hasn't she done that? Hey, Laurel? Or Lorella? Or whatever the hell you call yourself? Why haven't you done that? Why aren't you getting with all your freaking like-minded buddies and actually showing us how it can be done? Actually producing something, actually inventing something that's going to do what you claim you want done. Why are you sitting on your ass and not working actually toward producing what's necessary to do this? How come you haven't solved the fusion problem yet? How come you and your buddies haven't all gotten together and used your mighty intellect to fix all these problems, to actually give us viable solutions for all of this that's out there? Why aren't you working toward that? Every little bit helps, right? Well, let's see your little bit of helping. All right, enough of those stories. We're going to get into other ones. Bear mauls and kills Arizona man, right, drinking his morning coffee in unprovoked attack. You know, when the bear asks for coffee, you tell it no. I don't know if that's unprovoked. It is coffee now. It's a joke, folks. I know this is a sad thing. An unsuspecting Arizona man was mauled to death by a black bear on Friday in an unprovoked attack that left officials puzzled. And they can't even pronounce write this thing. Tucson resident, right? He's from Tucson, right? Stephen Jackson was drinking a cup of coffee at an outside table on his wooded Groom Creek property just before 8 a.m. when the large adult male black bear struck. Jackson, who was building a home on the grounds, appeared completely unaware of the predator until it pounced on him and dragged him about 70 feet down the embankment, where it began mauling the senior citizen. Neighbors heard Jackson screaming for help, tried to deter the bear by shouting and honking their horns. All right? None of you had a gun, huh? None of you had a gun. All right? But the bear refused to let go until one local official fired his rifle and killed the bear. See what it takes? Unfortunately, by that time, Mr. Jackson had succumbed to his horrible injuries, the sheriff's department said. Hold on, no, man. It's a bear of color, not a black bear. Wild animal attacks a man. Meth bear. That's all I can say. From Girardi. Dead woman knocks on a coffin during her own wake in Ecuador. A 76-year-old man, this is, Jensen has to be unhappy, food that got away. All right, 76-year-old woman who was declared dead at a hospital in Ecuador astonished her relatives by knocking on her coffin during her wake, and the incident has prompted a government investigation into the hospital. Relatives left the coffin behind and rushed retired nurse Bella Montoya back to the hospital after the wake Friday in the central city of Babahoyo. All right, Hoyo, I'm not trying to pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it. All right, son Gilberto Barbaro, all right, told the Associated Press. It gave us all a fright. Yeah, I'll imagine that, the fright that she had, though. All right, adding that doctors have said that his mother's situation remains dire. She was in the hospital. Yeah, it kind of says that. Ecuador's health ministry said that Montoya was intensive care Monday at the Martinez Incas Gaza Hospital. I'm not trying to do it. While the ministry investigates doctors involved in the case, a technical committee has been formed to review how the hospital issues death certificates. I hope this woman can recover, but I kind of doubt that she will, right? If she was that sick, unfortunately. So there were about 20 of us. About 5 hours from the wake, the coffin started to make sounds. My mom was wrapped in sheets and hitting the coffin, and when we approached, we could see that she was breathing heavily. She's under intubation, and doctors weren't giving any relatives much hope about her prognosis. No details have been released. I don't know if if it's an inheritance money thing. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, doctors removed a 5.2-inch, 1.76 pound kidney stone from a patient. That's a large kidney stone. That is a freaking large kidney stone. Surgeons at a hospital in Sri Lanka said a patient underwent surgery to remove a massive kidney stone that measured 5.6 inches long and weighed 1.76 pounds. Dr. Kugadas Sutharshan, all right, and a urologist team at the Army Hospital in Colombo, all right, performed the surgery on Casanitos Kunhe, all right, 62, to remove the colossal stone from his right kidney. The stone was measured 6.2 inches long and 4.5 inches wide, breaking the Guinness World Record for a kidney stone ever, for largest kidney stone ever recorded. The previous largest stone was 5.11 inches long and was removed from a patient in India in 2004. The kidney stone was also certified as the heaviest on record, weighed 1.76 pounds. All right. Sudarshan said the team determined that Kungagi's kidney was still performing its normal functions, and he is now recovering well from the operation. Dude, that is huge. How in the world were you able to go to the restroom? All right? Without the kidney being destroyed with something that size. I'm amazed. I truly am amazed. I can't lie to you. All right? That to me is absolutely amazing. Alrighty. For Jensen's benefit, we have this. Kitty Wars. Now, personally, you see right over there is a leopard. And if you go back here again, we'll go back over here. That's a lion. And you got two idiots with a camera that are, in my opinion, far too freaking close to either one of these creatures. Now, the lion has an issue with Mr. Leopard because Mr. Leopard is in its hunting territory. And it's about to let Mr. Leopard know, look at this thing. And you think that the leopard is just like, it's kind of cool, and a little chilling here. I'm not in any danger. I'll turn my back to it. Well, that was a good plan. That was a good plan. Not. This was not the best of plans here. I'm just kind of wondering what the cameraman, like I said, just look how close that this lion has gotten to him. This lion is just creeping up on him, stalking. You would think that somebody at this point would shout and give us some kind of warning here. Nope! Off it goes! And so, once again, Kitty Wars. Now, the story, the leopard did get away, climbed a tree where the lion couldn't get it. Lions are pretty heavy, so they can't climb up some of the smaller trees. Obviously, the leopard can. So all's well that ends well. Lions and tigers and bears. Final story of the day, folks. Final story. Also a kitty story. From Britain. The Beast of Ballino. Petrified driver spots big cat prowling Welsh village and believes it may be a leopard. This is impressive. Okay. And we have to wait for the commercial to go through. Skip the doggone ad. That's a big cat, and that's not a normal kitty cat, folks. Normal kitty cats aren't spotted like this, and that's a huge creature. And it doesn't look like a leopard. I'm not sure what the heck that is, but that is a big cat. And you can tell it's a well-fed cat. But there's been stories in the moors about a large creature that stalks deer in this area. So at first I thought it was a leopard. I can't lie. It was massive. I don't want to say that it's as big as a toddler. It may have been any bigger. The video doesn't do it justice. It was about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters, all right, at the push. It was a very large, big cat. Morgan from the nearby Ballina said he recorded the sighting on Wednesday using his phone. He said, I was petrified. That's the only word I can tell you. I felt like I had seen a ghost. At first glance, I thought it was going to come for me because it was a big cat. It made no noises. It just looked like it was investigating something. Yeah, this is not. This is it. Somebody said it was a lynx or perhaps a bobcat. That's not a bobcat. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not a bobcat. All right. Or a leopard. All right. Could it be a lynx? Possibly. Okay. All right. He suggested it was a Savannah cat, a Bengal or other large domestic cat. That is, if that's a large domestic cat, I'm pretty much, I'm pretty impressed. That's a huge freaking cat that's on the loose. All right, everybody. That's all the stories I got for the day. I hope that you enjoyed the little roundup for the week. Have a good day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Later.